Welcome back to New Americans Immigration Today on channel 15.8 HD TV. And today we're here again with Alex Okoli, a fellow immigration attorney here in Houston, Texas.
Thank you.
And we're going to have some great topics again for you all today. So you want to say anything to the audience today, Alex?
Thank you for having me again, and I'm delighted to be here.
Thank you. Alex is great. She's one of my favorite immigration attorneys in Houston.
And you're mine too. We do a lot of work together, and so it's a good thing where we can come together and enrich the community with our legal knowledge.
Thanks. I definitely agree. Alrighty, so today we want to talk to you all about a few things, but for the most part we're going to talk to you about something that's definitely been in the news a lot lately, and that is children in detention centers. Not just in Houston, but pretty much all around.
Right.
And so there's a lot of different ways to look at the issue, but I guess we can kind of start from the perspective of how the children even come to the U.S. So how are they getting here?
Right.
Primarily in my practice, I work with a lot of Central American children, but I do have some children that sometimes are from African countries.
Right.
But primarily, as in the news right now, it's mainly, the news is focusing on children who are coming from Central American countries.
Right. They refer to it in literature as a Northern Triangle, and those are the three countries of El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras. Mm-hmm. And so they has been a huge, in the last 5 years, well, it's 2018, so since 2014, which commenced the huge influx
mm-hmm.
of juveniles that enter the United States, and they've been entering without guardians or parents.
And it's true, and a lot of the reasons that those children do come over here are because of the country conditions and things they're exposed to.
Correct.
There they deal with gangs.
Oh gosh, it's a huge issue going on right now.
Yeah, that police corruption.
Yeah.
Who are unable to control the gangs, and it really leaves the children in a situation where they can't really do too much for themselves to protect themselves.
Right.
Sometimes the kids have to stop going to school because they're so afraid of the gangs, and then eventually they make plans and arrangements to come here to the U.S.
Now that's the most dangerous part that the children face when they come into the U.S. The parents, or whatever parent that is in their life, send them to come by themselves. And they usually pay a coyote
mm-hmm.
to bring them in. And for those who don't know what a coyote is, it's a person who is guiding their travel or their journey into the United States, or to the United States, at least to the border. The parent pays the coyote to ensure that the child makes it to the border, and it creates a dangerous situation because coyotes expect a lot of money. And if you don't have that money for the coyote at the end of the trip, the coyote can kidnap the child, or what we term as debt peonage, and hold on to the child until that parent pays that child's fee to get that child safely to the border. Sometimes the children separate from the coyotes, especially when they're passing through Mexico, and cartel trucks or other criminal organizations hijack the little travel group. I've had clients that were kidnapped, that were trafficked, that were raped. So it's a really dangerous journey, and they face so many dangers just to get here, to get apprehended by ICE, and then be held in detention facilities.
Yeah, and with the detention facilities, once they do arrive here, in previous years, it was fairly easy to get the children out. Again, Alex, you mentioned them having a guardian here. So generally, the guardian that was here was able to go to immigration, they call it the Office of Refugee Resettlement,
right,
and present the child's biographic documents along with the parents' biographic documents, such as their birth certificate, their passport or country ID and verify that that child belonged to them. And within a matter...
Or that they have the authority to take that child, because it could be an uncle or an aunt or a cousin or a sibling.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. But yeah, then they would do that, present that information, and usually within a matter of weeks, they were able to get that child to leave detention and at least live with them. However, now under the current administration, it's very difficult for anyone. You can be the biological mother or father, but it's still going to be very difficult for you to get your child out of detention right now. And so we can kind of go into that in terms of what can parents or what can family members do if they have a child that's in detention and they want to get that person out of detention. What can they do?
A lot of the kids come to guardians who also are undocumented or parents who are also undocumented, and they fear stepping up to claim the child because you are claiming the child at Department of Homeland Security, you know, and they have to do the biometrics, as you stated, and do background check to ensure that the person who they're going to relieve the child to is fit to care for the child. Nowadays, with the way immigration is going and they're using all avenues to track undocumented, you know, I can understand the fear. But if you have no U.S. citizen ties to step up to help out or be a sponsor, that can create some difficulty as well. What would you suggest?
Yeah, and I would say that, I'm glad you pointed that out. And when we say U.S. ties, what we're talking about is someone, a family member, or even a friend, someone that's related to the family who can say, once this child gets released to me, I'm going to be responsible for them, and I'm a U.S. citizen. So when we say U.S. ties, that's what we mean. Someone who's living here and who's a U.S. citizen. Or you can be a green card holder, or someone that has legal status such as TPS.
Yeah, or a work permit. So
that's a good one too. So that's what we mean when we say U.S. ties.
Right.
But as Alex mentioned, it is very, very difficult right now to even use that. And so my advice would be, if you don't have any U.S. ties, just to make sure you have all of your documents together. Try to make sure, even if you're the parent, I understand it's very difficult. You might be a parent in a situation where you have your own immigration case, and so you're afraid to go to try to get your child out. But if you don't have anyone else, you are your child's only advocate. So you really have to, it's a risk that you will be taking, but my best advice is to get a lawyer to represent you to try to help you get your child to get released from custody and out of detention. It may take a while. As we mentioned, just under the current administration, a lot of the rules have changed. A lot of their timelines have changed. I don't really think that there's necessarily a priority to get these children released as it was, you know, in times previous. So I would definitely say to get a lawyer to help you if you are the only option to get your child out of custody.
Yeah, that's very true. I do know that there are children who are with the ORR, which is the shelter that they go into once they are apprehended by ICE, who have been there for months. I know that if it's a non-parent who is trying to obtain custody of that child, then it takes quite a while because they need consent from parents in home country, you know, because the parents have to release, you know, the custody of the child to this uncle or aunt or sibling. So it can be a difficult process. In regards to the administration now, I mean, it's your child, so you need to go and present. In regards to them detaining the undocumented parent, I have not heard of any situations like that. After the fact, after having the child and you, the child moves in with you and so forth, maybe Border Patrol or ICE will become more inquisitive, trying to look at records of the children who have been released from ORR and the parent and whether that parent is undocumented. But when it comes to claiming the child, I haven't exactly heard of DHS using the status of the undocumented parent to report it to ICE and having that parent picked up afterwards. Have you?
No, I haven't heard of that. I've only heard of, you know, stories where there's a sponsor, which may be an extended relative, someone who is here undocumented, who does not have a pending immigration case,
Right.
and then ICE using their information to try, to track them down and eventually deport them. But again, not in terms of an immediate relative such as a parent. I haven't heard of that either. Not in Houston, and hopefully it stays that way.
Let's hope so.
Yeah.
Let's hope so.
One thing I do recommend also that I tell a lot of my clients to do is once they do get custody of their child and they get them out of detention, is to take the next step, which for me is a good idea, in my opinion, is the next step would be if the parent does not have, you can tell me your thoughts, if the parent does not have any legal documents saying that they have custody of that child,
Right.
to go to the state court, the family court, or the juvenile court and obtain custody of that child and get it in writing. Because a lot of times what happens is you have another parent, the parent that still lives in El Salvador, Honduras, or Guatemala, or Mexico, or wherever the child may be from, and then they come and say, oh no, this child is actually supposed to be with me. It's a custody battle. And so what you don't want is to get your child out of detention and then be susceptible to losing your child again due to a legal issue. So I always recommend, as soon as you get your child out, start contacting the lawyer and then get custody of that child on paper saying that you have primary custody of your child.
That also leads to a viable form of relief for juveniles these days, which is called special immigrant juvenile status. This is a two-part process in getting custody in a family court, but here you have to prove that the child was abused, abandoned, or neglected by one or both parents.
Mm-hmm.
So if you get that family court order and it does allege that there was abuse, abandonment, or neglect, that order can actually be used towards the SIJS process, which is the acronym for it. One thing is when children cross the border unaccompanied by an adult, they are immediately designated as UACs. UAC is the acronym for unaccompanied child.
Mm-hmm.
When you're designated as a UAC and you are in removal proceedings, you actually have two opportunities to get asylum, and that's through the asylum office of the county that you live in, or of the region that you live in. And then if they say no, you have a second chance to present your case before a judge in the immigration court.
Mm-hmm.
So there are some benefits to that UAC status for children.
Yeah, and there definitely are, which is why, again, that contacting an attorney and taking steps to get legal custody is so important, because you never know how it can set your child up for success in the future. And just set them up with an opportunity where they never have to worry about getting deported again or being detained again. That's the most important thing. You never want your child, once your child gets out of detention, you don't ever want to have to go through that again. And so, as she mentioned, the SIJS visa, or Special Immigrant and Juvenile Visa, is a great avenue to do that. It does allow, if your child does obtain that visa, it does allow your child to become a permanent resident, which is obtaining a green card in the United States, and then one day becoming a U.S. citizen. And so it's a very good avenue to take. Again, not everyone will qualify, but many children do qualify for that, and it really just changes the course of their future forever. So I definitely recommend that parents take that step. And
definitely, just to piggyback, I mean, it's not going to be easy. And so I want to, just stress that it's not going to be an easy process. But I was just discussing that with other colleagues, that just don't give up. Immigration is, as we stated before, it's a very complex area of law, And with our current immigration, I know people are very fearful as to what's going on, because it looks like we have a president and an administration that does not necessarily support immigration. But you don't give up. Don't give up. And I've heard the most successful stories of cases that lasted years.
Mm-hmm.
If you stick to your point and it's a legitimate case, then, you will reap the benefits of it at the end of the day.
You will. Exactly, hopefully.
But just don't give up.
Yeah, and another thing I want to talk about, too, in terms of once the child gets released from detention, which it can vary state by state, but it's very important for your child's legal process when it comes to both immigration and that state court part is enrolling your child in school here. Once your child is released from detention, that child needs to be enrolled in school. Now, sometimes parents run into an issue where the child may be 16, that maybe they're a teenager when they get detained. And by the time they get released, they're 17. And so a lot of parents are thinking, well,
what's the point?
Exactly. Is
it
really worth it?
Going to school in home country, but they stopped at a very early age where they should continue going to school.
Yeah, and a lot of parents ask that question. And my advice is always, yes, it is still worth, and it's very important. And not only is it important, but in a lot of times, in a lot of situations, when your child is seeking some type of legal relief under immigration, whether it be through applying for asylum or a visa or any other kind of application, the asylum officer or immigration officer that is interviewing them is always going to ask them, what are you doing all day long? Are you enrolled in school? It's so important that they're enrolled in school.
So important. Whenever I submit packets for asylum or for SIJS, I always obtain the report card of my kid, my client. I want to make sure that they're in school. I want to show this asylum officer, after all that this child has been through in their home country and their tumultuous journey to get here, they are in school and doing well. Now, sometimes it's not as well because they do have a language barrier that they're facing. One thing about these juveniles that come into this country, whether it's with a parent or not, is it's a huge culture shock. You know, it's a culture shock, and they don't speak their language, and they may get bullied, you know, and even if they're in a community that has predominantly their nationality, they still get bullied by the ones who have been here and can speak English, you know, or they speak Spanish a different way. So they still face the same growing up issues that, you know, American children face in the schools, you know. So it's really important to have a strong family unit for parents to be there for their kids and to ask questions and try to be as involved as possible. But school is very important because you came here for a reason. You came here for a better opportunity, and better opportunity here in the United States is education.
It is, and the other thing too is it shows immigration that you are being productive while you're here and that you're not just on the streets. And the thing is, you never want to give them any reason to deny your application for relief. And so for me, any child, the best way to do that is to say, hey, I'm here. Maybe I did enter the U.S. illegally for X, Y, and Z reason. But once I did arrive to the U.S., I enrolled in school. I'm doing well in school. There is a language barrier, but I'm still doing well. I'm still trying. I'm still fighting for my future. And that's the best thing you can do for your child once they are released is to enroll them in school. Now, like you were mentioning, sometimes they're older and maybe they've already completed school in their home country. You can enroll in a language school.
You can.
And that still counts. And it still weighs favorably with judges on both sides, whether it be in immigration court or in family court. Another option would be a trade school as well.
I see that a lot. I see the language school. I see the trade school. I think there are a lot of sociological factors for these kids as well once they come into the States, because these are kids, the ones that do come in by themselves, who have parents that left, you know, them in home country with a family member for years, you know, and so now they're going to be reunifying with that parent or the most viable parent, and there can be some tension in the household because this parent now has probably some children, you know, that he or she had in the United States, and these children are U.S. citizens, and that child is going to feel some bit of neglected and left out, you know. While I was in home country, you know, struggling, you're here in the United States and you have other children, you know, what about me? You know, and so I've seen the kids that want to separate themselves from the parent after they've been released to that parent, and they move in with a significant other, you know, and they're growing up faster just like they would have done living in their home country. So many different factors, And as an attorney, I still want to make sure that their home life is stable, because it is important for that child and for the parent also, you know. And I see a lot of issues that happen there, and it's unfortunate, but it's the reality of the situation. You know, it's the reality of the situation.
It is, and it can have an effect on the child, which is why, again, I think utilizing your resources once your child is here is so important, and that can be through seeking out counseling. I know a lot of parents that say, well, you know, I'm on limited, you know, means in terms of my income. I can't afford it. You can use a local church, even if you want to, for counseling.
And then we have the Detention Center, which is, you know, generally family counseling through the courts. That's provided by Harris County courts. And so I've referred families to the Detention Center. And then if you just look up Google, there are some, you know, counseling centers, and they have Spanish-speaking counseling, group sessions, and so forth. But it's a lot to encounter and face during this immigration process, and it's good, like you said, it's really important that you do seek counsel. And I know it could be costly, but I know plenty of attorneys like us that can work with the circumstances of a client. So
yeah, and we can, and we will, and there's so many organizations in Houston in general that will help to work with, you know, families to help them get what they need in order to go through the immigration process, and to help their child and just to set their child up for success. Something else that came to mind when we were talking were in terms of applying for these different applications for relief for the children, and that was types of evidence that they can use. A lot of times parents are always asking, you know, well, what can I use once my child is released? And say we're applying, you know, for the visa, or say we're going to apply for the child to get asylum. What can we use to document what happened to them in their home country? And so I'll start off with one that I always use. You can add in more, but I always tell people police reports are really good.
Definitely.
If you ever had to make a police report. And if you don't have that, affidavits.
Your affidavit, your family members who witnessed whatever you were going through, affidavits from them. I've easily gotten affidavits from family members in home country. They'll just write it and, you know, mail it or send it to someone who's traveling to the U.S. So that's very important evidence. Never underestimate the power of your testimony. And sometimes they don't have anything but their testimony, you know. So it's still an important form of evidence as well.
It is. And when we say affidavits, what we mean is you actually writing your testimony or having it transcribed by someone that's a notary in your home country. If you're not in the U.S., or if that person is not in the U.S., and then having it notarized by someone with authority to notarize a document stating, just verifying that that happened. So it's basically like a written testimony. That's it. And you can get that done in your home country, or you can get it done here in the United States. But it's a great form of proof just to document what happened. And I always tell people, if you can get it at least from 3 people, that's great.
Yep, I always say 3.
Yeah, it's like a magic number.
At least 3 affidavits, yes.
It's good, and all you're doing is just corroborating everything that happened to you. And so by the time that you are interviewed, the person that's interviewing isn't just relying on your verbal statements, but at least they have it documented from other people that, hey, this is what happened to this child, or to this woman's or this man's child. And there are several people who know that it happened, and, you know, here's their written statement saying that it happened. So it's really important that you have that. You always want to create a record of what's going on.
It's very important.
Whenever applying for something.
Yes.
Yeah. Trying to think, I think of anything else in terms of, you have any pieces of advice?
Well, my advice would go back all the way to home country. I'm just not a fan of this whole coyote system because of the dangers that the children face coming. Thank God that they make it safely. You know, they make it safely, but it takes a whole lot to get them here. So, I mean, if I could put a billboard, up in home countries, I would say, no coyotes. I think something that would be good for, next topic is notaries. Also, reliance on notaries, because in Latin America, notaries are attorneys. But here, they're just persons who have the authority to declare your statement as sworn testimony, with their stamp. So I think that clarifying that notaries here in the United States are not lawyers, even though a lawyer can be a notary, but notarios here are just notaries, but that doesn't mean they're a lawyer. But in home country, notarios are attorneys.
Yes, that's a great topic. We can definitely cover that one in our next session, just to educate the community on what to do and how to protect yourself when applying for legal relief for you or your child. So, again, thank you for tuning in with us today. It's always a great time. We really do enjoy sharing information that's going to help you, and we look forward to tuning in and sharing more information with you all next time. So that's it for us today. Have a great day.